All right, so you did it. You went to court, you argued your case, and boom, you won. You have a judgment in your favor. That's a huge relief, right? But here comes the real question. How do you actually get the money you're owed? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down right now. And this quote? It is the absolute truth. Because a court judgment, no matter how big the number is on it, is really just a piece of paper if the person who owes you money decides not to pay. The real challenge, that second half of the battle, is all about turning that paper victory into cold, hard cash. So how do we do that? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We're going to walk through the entire legal toolkit you have at your disposal here in Malaysia to enforce that judgment. We'll start with the most direct attacks and work our way up to the most serious consequences.
Okay, first things first, we're going to look at the primary enforcement tools, what I call the direct lines of attack. This is where you, the creditor, armed with that court judgment, go straight after the debtor's known property, their money, and their investments to get what you're owed. Essentially, you've got three main weapons in your initial arsenal. You can physically take and sell their stuff, you can literally intercept money that other people owe them, or you can put a legal lock on their investments to make sure your debt is secured.
Let's kick things off with the most common one, the writ of seizure and sale. This is probably what pops in your head when you think about debt collection, right? The court basically gives a sheriff the green light to go into the debtor's place, grab their movable property, we're talking furniture, cars, electronics, and then sell it all at an auction. But hold on, it's not a total free-for-all. The law actually protects the debtor's essential items. You can't take their basic clothes or the tools they need to earn a living. And a huge potential headache is when a third party claims ownership. You know, the bailiff seizes a car, and suddenly the debtor's spouse shows up saying, "Hey, that's mine." That can tie everything up in court. So this method really only works if the debtor has valuable stuff that is clearly, without a doubt, theirs.
Now, what if you happen to know where the debtor banks? Well, that's where garnishee proceedings come in. And let me tell you, this is an incredibly powerful tool. Instead of chasing after physical things, you go after money that is owed to your debtor. And the number one target? Yep, their bank account. The real genius of this is its two-stage process. First, your lawyer gets a secret court order called an order nisi. This freezes the money in the account without the debtor even knowing it's happening. This is key because it stops them from quickly pulling all the cash out. Only after the funds are frozen is there a second hearing to make the order absolute, which forces the bank to pay the money directly to you. That surprise element is what makes it so darn effective. So what if the debtor's wealth isn't in cash, but it's tied up in things like stocks, shares, or land? That's where a charging order or a prohibitory order for land comes into play. Think of it like a legal clamp on those assets. It doesn't get you cash right away, but it stops the debtor from selling or transferring those assets. This secures your debt and, honestly, puts a ton of pressure on them to finally settle up with you.
Okay, all of that is great if you know what assets the debtor has, but what happens when you don't? Or worse, you suspect they're actively hiding things from you. You can't exactly seize property you can't find. This brings us to the next phase, the interrogation. This is where the court steps in to help you uncover the truth. And the tool for this is the Judgment Debtor Summons, or JDS. The best way to think about this is a financial interrogation, under oath. The court forces the debtor to show up, get on the stand, and disclose everything. Every bank account, every piece of property, all their income, the whole shebang. It's an incredibly powerful way to find those hidden assets. The real teeth of the JDS comes from what happens next. After the debtor lays all their financial cards on the table, the court can order them to pay, either in one lump sum or in installments. But here's the kicker. If the debtor ignores the summons or disobeys that payment order, they can be held in contempt of court and potentially face jail time. Now, the debt doesn't go away, but the threat of prison is a very, very strong motivator to pay up.
So what if you've tried targeting assets, you've done the financial interrogation, and you're still getting nowhere? What if the debtor just refuses to pay or the amount is just too big? This is when a creditor has to make a choice to bring out the big guns, the most severe actions available, which are basically a legal final warning.
And this number is crucial. Here in Malaysia, if you want to start bankruptcy proceedings against an individual, the judgment debt has to be at least 100,000 ringgit. This threshold is there to make sure this drastic step is only used for really substantial debts.
Now, it's super important to understand the two different paths here. For a person, an individual, we call it bankruptcy. For a company, it's called winding up. In both cases, an independent third party, like the Director General of Insolvency or a liquidator, takes control of everything the debtor owns, sells it off, and uses the money to pay the creditors.
The road to personal bankruptcy is very strict, very procedural. It all starts with a bankruptcy notice, which gives the debtor just 7 days to pay. That's it, 1 week. If they don't, it's considered an act of bankruptcy, and that's the green light for the creditor to file a petition with the court. If a bankruptcy order is issued, the consequences are life-changing. We're talking travel bans and major restrictions on running a business. It's serious stuff.
For a company, the process is similar, but starts with a statutory demand. They get a little more time, 21 days to pay. If they don't, the law presumes they are insolvent, and a creditor can file to have the company completely wound up. But there is one major defense. If the company can prove there's a genuine, legitimate dispute over the debt, the court will throw the petition out. You can't use this just to bully a company in a real commercial disagreement.
So when you line up all these different tools, it becomes pretty clear that enforcing a judgment isn't about just picking one method and hoping for the best. It is all about strategy. Successful debt recovery is like playing chess, not checkers. You have to be thinking a few moves ahead.
And here's what that strategic playbook looks like. First, you have to investigate. Find out what assets the debtor actually has. Second, you've got to move fast before those assets mysteriously disappear. Third, you always have to do a cost-benefit analysis. Is the cost of chasing the debt worth what you might actually get back? And finally, it's usually smarter to start with the less aggressive options before you escalate to the big guns like bankruptcy.
And all of this really leaves us with one final big question. The legal system in Malaysia gives you a powerful set of tools, each one more serious than the last. The real strategic challenge for anyone trying to collect a debt is knowing which tool to use and when to use it, and figuring out where exactly that line is between persistence and pressure.